Welcome back, one and all, to Trekyards, your one-stop shop for all things Trek ships. I, of course, am Captain Foley.
And I am his second-in-command, Commander Cockins. And today's going to be a good episode, as today we're doing another Trekyards Originals. Kind of a little spice of our own personal Trek, isn't it? Where we take a ship designed by you, the fans, if Barry still counts as just one of the fans, and work with the creator of the ship to flesh it out, bring it to life, and bring it to your screens. And today we are joined by one of our excellent 3D modelling team and designer of the ship. Please welcome Barry Chapman.
Hey, good afternoon, good evening, hello.
I felt like that needed a bit of applause. The way I said that was like I should have done dubbing applause.
Barry Chapman, yes.
Yeah. Barry, Englishman. So it's two against one, Stuart. Although you're sort of English as well, if you count them.
Yeah, I'm kind of like English junior. English light.
Yeah. No Americans here today.
Yes, welcome, Barry. Great to have you join us for today's episode. And I gotta say that everyone is in for a real treat, as Barry has designed a very cool ship indeed.
As you would expect, put some thought into it, and we'll see in a minute. But we have some great animations, some great renders, and Barry did them to bring the ship into life and to you all today. So I proudly present to you, and Barry I'm sure does as well, his Consulate class, or called Reliant. Just take it away, Barry. Just take it away from me and tell us good things.
Okay, the Consulate class is one of the Lost Era ships, which is based between the original series movies and the Next Generation era. The ship was actually designed right alongside the sister class of the Ambassador class, which most of you know as the NCC 1701C Enterprise, featured in the Next Generation episode Yesterday's Enterprise.
The Consulate class prototype vessel, the USS Ajax NX-21859, was launched in 2326. After many successful space trials, the Consulate class development project was greenlit to go ahead for general production.
A total of 85 ships were built before the newer Nebula class eventually replaced this class in 2360. The remaining vessels were then converted into long-range cargo haul tugs, and ownership was passed down from Starfleet to the Federation civilian fleet, but we'll talk more about that later.
The ship was 483 meters long, 283 meters wide, and at a height of 95 meters. It had a top warp speed of 9.4. One of the ship's primary design influences was the ability for atmospheric flight and landing capacity. As such, the dual roll bar assembly acted very much as rear aerofoils, which aided the class in planetary atmospheric flight and landing. Small micro deflector emitters were able to redirect the beams and essentially create a heat shield bubble which protected the ship during the heat of atmospheric flight.
This was the first ship and last ship before the Intrepid class to have this unique feature. The feature was eventually phased out as it was shown that this procedure put undue stresses on the space frame and nacelles, which resulted in microfracturing. However, the lessons learned from this project eventually did filter into the new Intrepid class designs and made sure that the same thing did not happen again in any future iterations.
As a result of this new atmospheric shield entry technology, the ship did not possess a standard primary deflector array. Instead, it boasted 6 mini deflector/tracked beam emitters. This design allowed for each emitter to be focused and aimed independently and in various directions. As a result, they acted almost like a point defense system and can in fact repel non-energy based weapons such as drones, missiles, or various forms of torpedoes.
However, the design overall proved ineffective due to poor energy efficiency. It did, however, make maneuvering the ship and objects such as cargo modules around the ship much easier to accomplish, making this a great cargo class tug later in life.
The impulse engines on this design, like its sister ship, the Ambassador class, had a blue glow and not the traditional red. This was due to warp plasma being fed directly into the impulse housing manifold, which not only was more energy and cost efficient, but also had the added benefit of increasing engine performance and power output. Due to the hotter running impulse exhaust this created, however, it was found that impulse drive maintenance was increased, with some units needing to be replaced after only a few years due to burnout.
With this design being an almost complete overhaul of the original Miranda class design philosophy, one of the massive design flaws that was corrected in this newer design was the integration of the torpedo launchers into the main body of the ship, instead of the rather vulnerable and easily targeted weapons pod that was previously mounted on the top of the exposed roll bar. Also, a more versatile yet ultimately flawed warp core system allowed for power rerouting to various weapons or other systems such as impulse deflectors and tracked emitters.
The ability to land this ship was a great design idea, as it could in fact be used for terraforming missions, easy cargo and personnel resupply, or even used as a mobile planet-sized command base as needed for the frontline extended missions where a starbase was not easily within reach.
Also, as such, these were not focused on comfort, but instead had a very basic internal configuration and utilized a bunk-style living quarters arrangement, harking back to the days of battleships like the Excelsior class. As a result, these had a large crew complement or could transport many troops, scientists, or colonists planetside as required.
While also assigned to border patrol missions. Its prime mission profile was that of a cargo ship. It had a number of large internal cargo bays for this purpose and could deliver supplies as needed to distant outposts, or as mentioned earlier, or any terraforming projects or long-term planetary scientific field studies.
That doesn't mean, however, that she didn't have teeth, as she was heavily armed and could hold her own in any skirmish she may find herself a part of. As she was generally on the edge of the Federation space and could be called upon to assist in border actions with hostiles or even defend planetside operations from unfriendly forces that may pose a threat.
Total overall power was about 10% less than the Ambassador class design. While the ship had less power and power systems for increased warp like the Ambassador, any extra power could be redirected to phasers to create much more punch during combat. Heavy-duty phaser strips adorned the edge of the roll bars. These, like in the Miranda class, acted as mega phasers, being able to channel warp plasma directly into the beams as needed.
Increasing power output to the phasers, however, did often result in phaser emitter burnout and was not recommended. Also, due to the ship's larger cargo holds, more photon torpedoes could be loaded out, and as such she had more weapons capacity than the Ambassador class for heavy weapons in most cases.
The ship was also more maneuverable than the Ambassador class at impulse as well. This was due in large part to its need to be very versatile and quick on its feet when entering different atmospheres and dealing with various planetary occurrences such as shifting wind patterns or large planetary storms, which were sometimes present on the planet side of terraforming operations. However, due to large plasma transfer rates, she was very sluggish, slow after coming out of warp until the system bypasses switched over to the impulse control system. But once the impulse system switched over, watch out. This thing could outperform anything in sub-warp flight characteristics.
As mentioned earlier, she had integrated photon torpedo launchers, a total of 4 of them, 2 fore and 2 aft. These had a 10-second reload time per launcher. There was another Science or SWAC version as well. This design was classed as the Sagan variant, which sported a large sensor dish atop of a full roll bar instead of the split roll bar design of the Consulate class. This ship design was the original model that inspired designers to come up with the Nebula class design in later years.
As mentioned earlier, after the advent of the more versatile Nebula-class science cruisers, many of the surviving Consulate-class ships were converted into long-haul freighters, after being eventually handed down to the civilian fleet. And as such, some were converted into cargo tugs, which include a very similar cargo pod attachment module between themselves, like that was seen in the TOS-era Ptolemy-class tugs.
A total of 5 were still around after the ravages of the Dominion War. Officially, 4 were lost during the conflict. While none actually saw frontline action, they were instrumental in supply and resupply efforts for the Allies during the war effort.
And single-handedly saved the Federation. Your
The
design.
unsung hero.
Yes, exactly. All right, so now it's that part of the show where we take a look at the design, talk to the designer, and just ask him a few questions, behind-the-scenes kind of aspects of the ship.
But yeah, Stuart, I want to know, what do you think of the design?
I think it's fantastic. It is a very cool design, and it's kind of sad that it got relegated to just being a cargo ship down the road because it looks very aggressive. I really like it. It definitely goes hand in hand with the Ambassador class for sure.
Yeah, I think for every year it's kind of fun to see those alternate, class styles. You can see that good things are repeated and people look to the past, and so what would a Ambassador Lost Dear style Miranda be? And I like this because it's not just a literal version. There is actual design thought gone in, and that's what I like about a kit bash, because this is not a original shape per se. It's a inspired shape, but it's not just a kit bash. It's thought put in, so it certainly ticks more boxes. And when we do this the pre-show with Barry to work out the history, it's like, oh, brilliant. There's a whole lot of it. It's real nice to do.
And speaking of that history, Picard at one point mentioned he served aboard the Reliant. So I was going to work this into the script, but then didn't for some reason. It could be said that the Reliant Picard served on was in fact one of these classes of ships. So that's a cool tie-in as well. And if they've been in service that long, there's no reason why he wouldn't be on an older ship at the beginning of his career. So. But
Barry, talk us through the behind the scenes then. What was the genesis of this? Because ideas don't just come from nowhere.
Right. Okay. So as many people know, I started my Star Trek building on Star Trek Bridge Commander. This ship was there was a competition, monthly competition of building a Lost Era craft. This was my entry. I wish I could say I won, but I come second.
That's pretty good.
This also may be one of the first Trekyards ships featured that is actually a playable mod in Bridge Commander. It's still around, so if you want to take it for a spin, blow up some Klingons or Romulans, it's
or
downloadable.
Some cargo.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I never actually gave that feature. And back when we done, she's about 6 or 7 years old.
Yeah.
So it's been around for a while. The design has been sitting in my archive, and yeah, I've always had a soft spot for this ship because it's, as you said, it's got the aesthetic, but it's also got enough different about it to make it look unique. During the design process, I did originally have a secondary hull underneath it, similar to the Nebula, but it just didn't look right. Having a big, an ambassador style sort of deflector dish stuck underneath the saucer just didn't look right. So that was chucked out of there. Then I come up with the little slits and thought, oh, that looked good for a deflector.
The multi-slit, that deflector idea is a really great idea, actually.
It was like, I tried to answer some of the questions that the Miranda had, like, where the hell is the deflector?
We've never heard that question before here.
Yeah, why is the torpedo tube? How do you get up to it to start with? You have to create ladders, Jeffrey's tube to get up to work every morning.
Yes.
Yeah. Form followed function in this case rather than function followed form. Everything looked cool when I just made everything look to the function from the look. That's the primary look of the roll bars, and I wanted like some kickbacks to the Reliant Miranda.
Yeah.
But I didn't want them to be a dedicated area like you did on the original Miranda.
Now, when you designed it, did you have planet-side landing capabilities in mind, or was that something that came after the fact, where you thought that would be a cool feature to add?
It was an after-the-fact thing. It had come up a few years ago when I was really looking at it. As I've always thought the Miranda could be a landing kind of vessel. Like you got the nose there as a good landing platform. And you haven't got the weakness like you've got in like a Connie, where the neck and the pylons are not conducive to atmospheric flight, because basically as soon as you come in the atmosphere, the secondary hull will detach from the second primary hull due to that little thing called gravity. It's got like a catamaran shape to it, so I can envision it land on water and go for a little spin around on the water. So I integrated some landing gear into the cells and took it from there.
So obviously this is a design that you've had for so many years. How much have you actually tweaked it as you've gone? Or was it very much the genie was out the bottle at the first iteration and you sort of just made slightly better models as the years have gone on? Or have you actually really kind of... This has been your design and you've tried to tweak it as it went?
No, I haven't touched it since I released it on Bridge Commander. This is the current model is the Bridge Commander model. When we were talking about doing this for this episode, I did actually go revisit and think, well, maybe I could upscale the textures or do a redesign, put some more polys into it. But I thought, every time I looked at it, I thought, I don't need to. I'm happy the way it is. It's a high enough poly count for what it is. It will be a background ship in like a Deep Space Nine battle. The best of things. So I got it right first time. I don't want to say be a bit big-headed about it, but bear in mind it took me a month to build it. It's not like I can build my capacity of building a ship in a week. I have got all the work in progress pictures, so you can see how bad it looked at the start of it to narrowing it down until I got to this design. Once I got the final shape, it fell together quite quickly.
I was going to say, it's obviously inspired by the Miranda class. So is the Miranda or the Ambassador, for that matter, like some of your favorite ships in Trek? Is that why you picked them, or was it just something that needed to kind of be revisited for this Lost Era? So
the brief was just anything in the Lost Era, and obviously the only thing we've seen for the Lost Era is the Ambassador. So, and if you go from the design lineage of TNG, TMP to TNG, you've got the Constitution to the Galaxy, and you got the Ambassador in the middle. So I went from the Miranda to the Nebula with the step in between. That was my thinking of doing this project.
So we said the Sagan variant with the full roll bar and the module on top. Do you have a model of that as well for in the game?
Yes. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, that was obviously you got the Nebula class version with the SWAC dish on the back of it. That's obviously the first. Unfortunately, it does look a little unbalanced with the NetSWAC on the back of it, unlike the Nebula because of the size of it. But it does work a little bit.
I really appreciate the whole terraforming and colony piece, because you wouldn't think of the Intrepid. It's not designed for that to serve that role, and so there's an apparent hole in the Federation ecosystem of having that sort of support craft. I mean, yes, you can have 10 runabouts, but this is infinitely bigger than 10 runabouts in terms of internal volume. So I kind of appreciate that this feels a very natural hole in the system. Obviously, I'm sure you could refit the Nebula to probably land. If you wanted to invent it, could. But this I thought was a nice touch, because it gives a solid reason that we deal a lot in Trekyards with either it's the fastest ship ever, it's the most powerful ship ever, it's got all the new technology within a T, and so to actually design a ship that has a role, has a function, but actually has weaknesses and fails, I would say it's almost more brave of you to design a flawed ship, because it's a nature of the eras. Look at the Transwarp failed. That entire movie was a thing about how the Excelsior failed. This is one of the interesting things about it, is it had to be refitted, and then the B came along. It's like all these bits of story. So I like the thought put in for sure.
I always like to think. I've got two things. First of all, the terraforming aspect of it, I thought was a bit of good in Trek irony, because the Reliant was part of the original terraforming project, Genesis.
Yeah.
So this one is also involved in a more slower, successful terraforming sort of role. But I always like to think that after the Klingon peace initiative after Star Trek 6, the Federation was a bit broke after helping the Klingons out, helping them establish them. So they didn't have a lot of money to put into their ships. If you look at beforehand, like the ships prior to the Lost Era are still around in the Next Generation era. The Remanders, the Reliance, the Oberth, the Excelsiors, but there's nothing from the Lost Era. So I like to think that the entire Lost Era ship build were always built on the cheap, or used as a platform for the stepping stone for the Galaxy project. So the stuff they was never designed to be long-term ships. That's why they were a little bit rubbish. They served their purpose there, but they were more disposable. They were a stopgap class. So they were never designed to be 100-year service like its predecessors and successors. So that's why you don't see any in the later eras.
Well, it's a really interesting point that you brought up. I never really considered that. During the Dominion battles, you see a lot of movie era ships, but no real lost era. That's really interesting, actually. Just planned obsolescence, as they call it. The ships are supposed to just be on the cheap, as you said, for a limited time.
The Excelsiors and all that lot were all aging, so they needed a stopgap so they can develop all the new tech. So let's not just take one step. Let's take the big leap into the Galaxy class era. So we just build advance the technology we've got now and build the Ambassador, the Consulate, and obviously the Consulate name is a play on Ambassador.
There's holes in the Trek lore, and especially for why are these things not in the Dominion War? It's like there's one CGI reason they didn't build them. There is literally black and white a reason. It's more interesting to say, well, why didn't we see the Ambassador in early TNG say, I guess they just didn't want to use a model. I mean, they had it. They could have used it. We saw it occasionally, but super occasionally. It would have been nice to have seen, or later in TNG would have been cool. Same with the refit, we had a reason, obviously. So yeah, I like that you're actually actively thinking about how to make these eras make more sense, because it's one of those weird dichotomies of, well, here's the reason, but here's the visual. There's 30,000 Mirandas. Why the hell isn't there any ambassadors? I mean, phaser strips. Come on, guys. They're a big invention. Why are we still using phaser ball turrets in that era?
This is a fantastic little ship, I got to admit. I really, from the top, it looks a little squashed. It maybe elongate the saucer section a little bit. That's my only real thing I would suggest. But I really do like the Lost Era aesthetic, and the way that you put the ship together. It looks really good. So I got to give you kudos for that. And I do like the deflector idea that you had. That just looks fantastic. So good job.
And the torpedo launchers are real nice. The way they're integrated is real good. And so it's a fine balance between being bulky and not bulky. And I actually hadn't seen it from the top. The top's a little weak angle, but for the most part, it's real balanced. I mean, most ships aren't good from every angle, so it's
I only had sort of 3 things I really wanted to integrate in it from the Ambassador. That was obviously the saucer. the nacelles, and where you got the skirts, pylon skirts around the back of the secondary hull. I wanted them in there. That's why it's got that sort of look round the rear. And then to tie it in with the Reliant side, I wanted to put the Reliant style hangar bays in the back.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which look great.
And I gotta say too that they're not just cut and paste warp nacelles. These ones are a little bit longer and not as thick or girthy, if you will, as the Ambassador class nacelles. So it's not just a rehash of the nacelle, just cut it off and flip it upside down. You actually redesigned it and lengthened it out a little bit. So I like that. And
the aesthetic reason for that is there's extra warp coil and for the landing gear.
Oh, perfect, yeah.
And we hope you guys liked it too. This other originals with one of our bestest team. I think we call him our in-house guy. So now you've seen one of his creations. So I think you should all clamour. You should all comment below saying, we want more Barry. We want more Barry. He should design more ships because he can just build them. You know, someone give him an idea. He can build it in a week because he's a better model than he was then 7 years ago. And then we can do another episode with Barry. So you clamour, he'll build. Everyone wins.
That's right. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. Barry, thank you very much for joining us and bringing us this fantastic design. And I look forward to doing more with you. And guys, if you liked it, click like, put your comments or questions for Barry down below. I'm sure he'll be reading them and answering them. And just let him know how much you like his design. And don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, do all that fun stuff, all the typical stuff. And I guess we will see you next time. So until then, I'm Captain Foley.
I'm Connor Cookins and guest.
Admiral Barry Chapman.
It's an admiral.
When did that happen?
Pulled rank.
Commander-in-Chief.
Oh, dear.
Okay, we better go before he gets too full of himself. Bye, guys.